the Southern Territory. Even though Ding Xiaoyao and the others had fully conquered the exalted Han Empire, their headquarters was still at ancient Domain City. Moreover, it had become the center of profounder continent and the most flourishing city on the continent under her management. Besides that, it had the highest number of experts as well. All the races, powers, and clans of the continent had been organized together by her, and she'd accomplished it very smoothly, because no force throughout the continent could fight the Southern Territory. Xiaoyao, our profounder continent, has a total of 57 half-saints right now. As for Monarch Realm experts, they are comparatively numerous at almost 10,000. That's the total of all the races including the Oceanic clans, the Devil race, Demon race, and our human race. But we're really too inferior when compared to the hallowed grounds. In one of the rooms within the city, and Bairu put down the scroll in her hand and said, "If it wasn't for the fact that the members of the hallowed grounds weren't unable to come here with ease, we wouldn't be able to resist them at all." Ding Xiaoyao was seated in front of Bairu, but Ding Xiaoyao didn't speak, and so the room fell silent. A long time passed before Ding Xiaoyao suddenly spoke. "I feel quite uncertain." "About the future?" asked Bairu. Ding Xiaoyao nodded and said, "The hallowed grounds, the defiant profounders, and the outer heavens. The hallowed grounds is our enemy already, and they'll definitely destroy us if they have the chance. As for the defiant profounders, that's a group of wild and arrogant people. It's probably very likely that they'll become our enemies once they emerge from the seal, because we're the weakest and the easiest to bully. As for the outer heavens, even if we're able to survive until the end, how would we fight the outer heavens?" And Bairu fell silent as well. They knew much more than the others, so they were very well aware of the situation that profounder continent was in. Could be said to be a hopeless situation. Even though they had a period of peace now, they were very well aware that a storm was approaching, and they didn't know what the fate of profounder continent would be. A short while passed before Ding Xiaoyao suddenly shook her head and smiled. "Actually, why should we worry about such headache-inducing things? Just let Yang Yi think of it. What we have to do is to do our best and stay by his side. If he creates a path towards survival, then all of us will live. If he creates a path towards death, then we'll just die together. In short, the worst possible scenario is just death." And Bairu shook her head and chuckled. "That's optimistic of you. It can't be helped. I would just be bringing down suffering upon myself if I don't." Ding Xiaoyao continued, "Right. Do you think that fellow Yang Yi has attained the monarch realm?" And Bairu said, "And Nanjing has attained it, so there's no reason to think that he hasn't. I'm afraid only in Nanjing will be able to keep up to him in the future." Ding Xiaoyao's voice carried an indescribable trace of emotion as she spoke those words, and Bairu fell silent. A long time passed before Ding Xiaoyao spoke once more. "Right. What exactly is going on with Luwaner?" A wisp of seriousness flashed through Bairu's eyes when she heard that, and she said, "Yang Yi saved her from the exalted Han Empire. She was very ordinary in the beginning, but she revealed an extremely terrifying natural talent in the Sword Dao upon joining the Sword Sect. She stood for a day before the enormous sword in the Sword Sect which Yang Yi left his sword intent on, and then she comprehended sword intent on the next day. The most terrifying part is that she's already at the 7th level of sword intent now." Ding Xiaoyao's eyelids twitched. She attained the 7th level in such a short period of time. Such speed is more than 2 times faster than Yang Yi. Ding Xiaoyao pondered deeply for a moment and said, "It doesn't make sense. What did Elder Mu say? A genius born gifted in the Sword Dao." And Bairu spoke solemnly. Elder Lu said the same. However, Elder Lu said that she possesses some sort of void sword physique. I don't know what it is. In any case, her physique was made to cultivate the sword. Ding Xiaoyao said, "No matter what, it's a good thing. We must treat her well and satisfy all her needs when it comes to her cultivation. Since we can't help him in battle, then we have to do all we can to create some formidable help for him." Bang! Suddenly, thunderous rumbling resounded in the sky above the city, and Bairu and Ding Xiaoyao's face turned grim. Meanwhile, Elder Mu's voice resounded, "Those beneath the half-saint realm, stay in the city. This time, it was astonishment that filled Nibiru and Ding Xiaoyao's eyes. A blue vortex had suddenly appeared in the sky above the city. The vortex was very huge, and it was around 1 kilometer wide and long. Elder Mu, Lu Yen, and the other half-saints of Profounder Continent appeared in the sky above the city. Someone is forcefully creating a spatial passageway. Lu Yen had a solemn expression in his eyes as he gazed at the blue vortex. He continued, "That person's strength surpasses mine for now." The expressions of everyone here turned solemn. Elder Mu asked, "Is it the hallowed grounds?" Lu Yen nodded and said, "It should be. Looks like the hallowed grounds intends to deal with us before the defiant Profounders emerge. Their cultivations won't be suppressed as they've been teleported over through a spatial passageway. Looks like we're in trouble. We'll just fight them as always," said Elder Mu in a low voice. The other half-saints intended to attack when they heard this, but Elder Mu stopped them. "All of you aren't strong enough to allow your attacks to enter the spatial passageway." Bang! Meanwhile, Lu Yen slapped his palm towards the blue vortex. After Lu Yen attacked almost 10 times, everyone here clearly heard shrill cries resounding from within the vortex. Lu Yen attacked once more. But this time, an enormous energy palm shot out from within the blue vortex as well, and it smashed against Lu Yan's energy palm. Both of them exploded and dispersed in midair. After that, a middle-aged man in a luxurious robe and an old man in a dark golden robe appeared. Next, 10 old men in red robed walked out from within the vortex. Once they'd walked out, another 80 white-robed old men walked out of the vortex. However, some of these old men had a strand of blood on the corner of their mouths. 2 extraordinarily strong half-saints, 10 mid-grade half-saints, and 80 ordinary half-saints. The experts from the Southern Territory were astounded by this scene. Even Elder Mu and Lu Yen revealed extremely solemn expressions. As for the rest of the people within the city, their faces had turned pale, and they weren't able to arouse any intention to resist these experts. Many weren't aware that even half-saints were divided by grades. All they knew was that 92 half-saints had come from the hallowed grounds, and that was double the number of half-saints that Profounder Continent possessed. At this moment, even Ding Xiaoyao and Nibiru, who were very composed before this, couldn't help but reveal dense shock on their faces. Of course, there was a trace of despair there as well. "I'm from the hallowed halls. They call me Supreme Exalt He." The middle-aged man who wore a luxurious robe disregarded the others who stood behind Elder Mu and Lu Yen, and his gaze immediately descended onto the two of them. "I'm quite interested in the two of you. Logically speaking, figures of your level shouldn't be present on Profounder Continent. You didn't come here for that, right?" Lu Yen smiled. "Based on the forces you brought with you, you intend to destroy us, right?" Supreme Exalt, he shook his head and said, "The heavens are benevolent, and so is my hallowed grounds. I'll give both of you and all the others behind you a chance. Come over to my hallowed grounds. So long as you agree, we'll immediately become friends. If you refuse, then I'm sorry. All the half-saints of Profounder Continent will die. You want us to side with the hallowed grounds?" Lu Yen smiled and said, "I can't make that decision. But believe me, I'm sure that Elder Mu and I will fight to our deaths, and you'll lose half of the experts you brought with you." "I do believe you," the middle-aged man said. "However, my hallowed grounds can pay such a price if we're able to eliminate all future troubles. Of course, we don't want to do that unless we have no other choice. So, will you really not consider my offer? You should understand that we will only have a chance at survival by killing the defiant Profounders. If you don't join forces with us, then this little bit of strength that Profounder Continent possesses would be unable to guarantee your survival even if we don't destroy you." Lu Yen gazed at Elder Mu. The latter said, "Your group strength really is sufficient to annihilate all the half-saints of Profounder Continent, and it would seem like the only way to survive would be to side with the hallowed grounds. Actually, we don't mind fighting the hallowed grounds with the defiant Profounders or fighting the hallowed grounds with the defiant Profounder." "What are you trying to say?" asked Supreme Exalt He. Elder Mu smiled. "Only Yang Yi can make the decisions in Profounder Continent. If he's willing to become allies with your hallowed grounds, then we'll be allies. But if he isn't, then I'm sorry. We'll have no choice but to fight you to the death. Why? Supreme Exalt, he spoke in a low voice. He's only at the monarch realm. Even if his natural talent in the sword Dao is extraordinary, it isn't sufficient to make both of you submit to him, right? Elder Mu said, you say that the only way to survive is by killing the defiant profounders. But in my opinion, the only way to survive is to follow Yang Yi. As for what you said about being able to crush us, I don't doubt it at all. But it's fine. It's fine even if we fall. After all, it's our own choice, and it's a gamble that we made. Yang Yi should be dead by now. Supreme Exalt, he said. He isn't a match for Nether Maiden. That may not necessarily be the case. A voice suddenly resounded. Supreme Exalt, his expression changed slightly as he looked up towards the horizon. A ray of light flashed through the sky, and it wasn't long before Yang Yi appeared before everyone. You're still alive. Supreme Exalt, his face turned slightly gloomy. That's impossible. Yang Yi said, it's not impossible at all. Now let me tell you what I think. We won't side with the hallowed grounds, but we can keep clear of the hallowed grounds from now onwards. Don't offend us and we won't offend you. What right do you have to speak about such things with us? It was the old man beside Supreme Exalt he who interrupted Yang Yi. Then let's fight. Yang Yi stared the old man in the eyes, and his voice was firm and piercingly cold. You? The old man in dark golden robed laughed coldly. He raised his right hand and made a clawing motion towards Yang Yi and the others. Yang Yi and the others weren't harmed by it, but numerous buildings throughout ancient Domain City collapsed in an instant. Moreover, the walls around the city were instantly transformed into powder. Besides that, the ground around the city was collapsing incessantly. However, not a single person within the city was dead. The old man said, if we want, then not to mention your tiny ancient domain city, we can even destroy the entire continent. Is that very amazing? Yang Yi flipped his palm, and the stone of suppression appeared in his grasp. As soon as that happened, a powerful and mysterious force enveloped the surroundings, and the strengths of all the experts from the hallowed grounds was suppressed by a realm. At the same time, 21 half-saint puppets appeared behind Yang Yi. Now, Yang Ye's side had 72 half-saints. While it was still fewer than the hallowed grounds forces, their quality far surpassed the hallowed grounds. After all, the half-saints of the hallowed grounds had been suppressed. Our hallowed hall's greatest mistake was allowing the stone of suppression to fall into your hands. Supreme Exalt, he looked Yang Yi in the eyes. Even though his cultivation had been suppressed, his face was still extremely calm. However, do you think that you can crush us just because you have the stone of suppression? Every single person here is an elite of the hallowed halls. Believe me, even if their cultivations have been suppressed, every single one of them isn't weaker than the half-saints on your side. I know, Yang Yi replied. However, we're confident in our ability to kill 90% of your forces. Moreover, once the I and the other half-saints die, my master and senior Lu Yen will leave Profounder Continent and head to the hallowed grounds with the stone of suppression. We'll make the hallowed grounds pay 100-fold for every single person that dies here. Besides that, I'm sure you're aware that I'm acquaintances with that little girl in Nameless City. At that time, even if their joint forces are unable to destroy your hallowed grounds, it should be sufficient to cripple it. Once that happens, we'll see how all of you fight the defiant Profounders. That's a good idea. Lu Yen nodded. I think it's not bad as well. Elder Mu chimed in. You're threatening us? Asked Supreme Exalt he. Yang Yi glanced at the members of the hallowed halls and said, the defiant Profounders are about to emerge from the seal, and a calamity is upon us. If the hallowed grounds fights us to the death, then I guarantee that we'll definitely cripple you when the defiant Profounders emerge. I won't ally myself with the defiant Profounders, but I won't ally myself with the hallowed grounds as well. What I want is very simple. I want all of us to keep clear of each other and don't interfere in each other's business. If the defiant Profounders attack the hallowed grounds, then it's your problem. If they attack us, then it's our problem. In short, so long as the hallowed grounds doesn't come looking for trouble with us, Then we won't head over to the hallowed grounds to cause trouble. He had the sword precursor with him now, so he naturally wouldn't head over there to cause trouble. In his opinion, the Southern Territory's main objective was to improve its strength as soon as possible. Most importantly, he had to improve his strength as soon as possible. After all, he only had another month to live. Approved. Suddenly, a voice resounded from within the blue vortex. The expressions of supreme exalt he and the others changed slightly when they heard it because it was the hallowed lord's voice. On the other hand, a wisp of astonishment flashed through Elder Mu and Lu Yan's eyes. Supreme exalt he took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi, and then he led the others back into the blue vortex. Meanwhile, the old man in a dark golden robe stopped when he was about to enter the vortex, and he turned and gazed at Yang Yi. You'll come begging for my hallowed grounds help when the defiant profounders emerge from the seal. He turned around and stepped into the vortex once he finished speaking. In next to no time, the blue vortex vanished from the sky, and the sky returned to its previous calm state. Countless people throughout the city heaved sighs of relief when they witnessed this scene. Yang Yi was the same. He had to admit that Profounder Continent really was too weak when compared to the hallowed grounds. If the defiant Profounders weren't there to tie down most of the hallowed grounds' forces, then it truly wouldn't be difficult at all for the hallowed grounds to crush Profounder Continent. It was even to the extent that the strength who'd arrived earlier was sufficient to crush Profounder Continent. Of course, if they fought and the forces of Profounder Continent fought to the death, then the outcome would be exactly as he said. At least 90% of the hallowed grounds experts would perish here. Young Master, that person who spoke earlier is extremely strong. Suddenly, Lu Yen spoke solemnly. Don't travel to the hallowed grounds again unless it's very important. Elder Mu nodded and said, He's the strongest expert I've ever seen. I'm truly unable to imagine how he actually possesses such terrifying strength when he hasn't stepped foot into the Saint Realm. Yang Yi asked, How strong is he? Boundlessly close to the Saint Realm. Lu Yen replied, Of course, even if he's only a step away from the Saint Realm, he's still a half-saint. However, his strength far surpasses ordinary half-saints. So long as he obtains quintessence violet energy, then stepping foot into the Saint Realm should be a piece of cake to him. Yang Yi spoke in a low voice. Senior Lu, even you are unable to fight him? Lu Yen shook his head and said, I've been sealed in this damnable place for too long, so my strength is far inferior than what it used to be. Coupled with the fact that I have no quintessence violet energy to recover my strength isn't just unable to rise, it'll even regress endlessly. Haha. If the members of the Yang clan knew that I died here, they would definitely summon my soul and whip my soul because it's truly too humiliating. When he spoke up to this point, Lu Yen raised his head and looked up into the sky. But the people of this region are quite strong. They were actually able to seal those madmen and even use this world as a cage to trap them for 100,000 years. Young Master, if you're able to leave this world in the future, then you must be careful. After all, the Yang clan is truly too far away from here. Will we be able to leave? Elder Mu looked up into the sky while a wisp of bewilderment appeared in his eyes. Master, trust me. We definitely will. Yang Yi looked up into the sky as well. He knew that a group of extremely formidable experts resided far above there, and even just one of those experts would be sufficient to sweep through the entire continent, including the hallowed grounds. However, he was still confident. The reason the outer heavens had created the heaven path to stop the people of this world from leaving was because they didn't want the people of this world to possess quintessence violet energy. Because so long as they didn't have quintessence violet energy, then none could attain the Saint Realm, and if none could attain the Saint Realm, then no one in this world could pose a threat to them. The key was quintessence violet energy. Yet he had it. Yang Yi noticed that so long as his cultivation improved, then the primordial violet energy within the primordial pagoda would increase, and it would immediately appear within the world in the first level of the pagoda. He could sense it and even control it. Thus, so long as he willed it, he could use the primordial violet energy within the first level of the pagoda. But he didn't dare to. Firstly, his strength was insufficient. So, if others were to find out about the secret, then regardless of whether it was the experts of the hallowed grounds, the defiant profounders, or nameless city, they would definitely pursue him. Based on the current strength of profounder continent, it couldn't resist any one of those forces. Moreover, once the half-saints found out that he had primordial violet energy, then even the half-saints within the city would probably act against him. He wanted to utilize the scarce primordial violet energy he possessed to help Elder Mu and Lu Yen attain the Saint Realm. But there was a problem. What if they couldn't attain the Saint Realm? Or even if they attained the Saint Realm and crushed both the hallowed grounds and defiant profounders, what would they do about the heaven path? Could Elder Mu, Lu Yen, and around 100 half-saints fight the outer heavens? It was absolutely impossible. After all, even the defiant profounders, who consisted of over 10,000 Saint Realm experts all those years ago, had been defeated. So, he couldn't utilize the primordial violet energy he possessed, because the slightest mistake might bring destruction to the entire continent. Within a hall in the city, the defiant profounders will emerge from the seal in 2 months, and their undying physiques will vanish then. At that time, the entire continent and even the hallowed grounds will be transformed into a battlefield. I don't know if the hallowed grounds will attack us, and I don't know if the defiant profounders will attack us once they escape the seal as well. But I know one thing: only the strong will be able to survive in the future, and all the weak might be annihilated. Xianxia's voice was sonorous like a bell. Ding Xiaoyao and the other girls, all the half-saints, and some of the 9th-rank Monarch Realm experts of the Southern Territory were within this hall. All of their faces became gloomy when they heard Yang Yi. Yang Yi continued, "The current situation we're in isn't very promising, because regardless of whether it's the defiant profounders or the hallowed grounds, both sides are stronger than us. So we're the most likely force to be crushed in the future. I'm not trying to scare all of you, and I'm just relaying the facts to all of you. From today onward, every single one of us here might die at any moment. Is the situation severe to such an extent?" asked Ding Xiaoyao. Yang Yi nodded and spoke solemnly. "It's much more severe than what I've said. From this moment onward, Profounder Continent will enter into a state of war. Xiaoyao, use all the resources we have to satisfy the needs of those with good natural talent or those who are about to break through. In short, increase the overall strength of our side. No matter the cost." Ding Xiaoyao spoke seriously. "If we do that, then our resources will probably be completely exhausted. If we don't use it on the living now, then should we keep it for the dead?" asked Yang Yi. Ding Xiaoyao's heart shook when she heard this. She took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi before she nodded. At this moment, she understood that the situation was probably severe to the point that even Yang Yi wasn't confident in their ability to face it. Yang Yi glanced at the people in the hall and said, "There are members of the Oceanic clans, Demon Race and Devil Race here. There has been enmity between all of us, but I hope that all of us can put our strength together and work together as one from now onwards. Moreover, you must keep the members of your respective races in check as well and make them do the same. Because this might be the last time we're working together." After all of them left with heavy expressions on their faces, a voice suddenly resounded in the hall. "I want to compete with you in the sword." Yang Yi was stunned when he heard this. Compete with me in the sword? Who's brave enough to do that? It was Lu Wanner. At this moment, Lu Wanner didn't seem weak and delicate as she used to be, but she didn't have an oppressive aura as well. She was very indifferent and quiet like water. A wisp of surprise flashed through Yang Ye's eyes when he saw her. "You've attained the 7th level of sword intent? How could this be possible?" It had only been a short period since he last saw her, and she didn't even know how to use the sword then. Yet now, she was at the 7th level of sword intent. Lu Wanner nodded and said, "I have a huge number of things that I don't understand. I might be able to figure it out if we compete. Elder Mu says that she's an extraordinary genius in the sword Dao." Meanwhile, Ding Xiaoyao walked over. Xianxia, Xiao Yushi, Su Qingshi, and Anbairu were by her side. Moreover, a pretty little girl was standing by Su Qingshi's side. Yang Ye's gaze descended onto the little girl, and the little girl was looking at him as well. There was a trace of curiosity in her eyes, and there was a trace of affection within them as well. Nianxue. As soon as he spoke, Yang Yi was already in front of the little girl, and he grabbed her in his arms. Yang Ye's actions were quite rough, but the little girl wasn't afraid, and she even spoke in a clear and melodious voice. Dad, Daddy. The reason she wasn't afraid wasn't because of a natural feeling of closeness with Yang Yi. It was because Xianxia had told her that Yang Yi was her father. Yang Ye's eyes instantly became moist. However, he was beaming from ear to ear. That feeling of being a father was impossible to describe with words. Brother! Suddenly, another clear and melodious voice resounded, and then Yang Yi felt a delicate figure embrace him. It was little Yao. Little Xiao wasn't immature as she seemed before, and she was slightly more mature now. Big brother, you're finally back. Little Yao was slightly choking with sobs, but there was a smile on her face. Since their mother had passed, her older brother was the one and only loved one in her heart. Yang Yi rubbed her head, and then his gaze swept past Xianxia and the others. He said, I know that all of you were definitely worried about me throughout this time. I'm unable to give any promises to all of you, and I don't want to apologize about it. Because we're all a family, and all of that isn't necessary. I'm not part of your family. It was Ding Xiaoyao who spoke these words. For the sake of backing up her words, she even walked over to the side and created some distance between Xianxia and the others. But you are. Yang Nianxue spoke in a clear and melodious voice. You are part of our family. The others smiled when they heard this. The corners of Ding Xiaoyao's mouth twitched slightly, and she walked over to Yang Nianxue before lightly pinching her cheek. She said, Little girl, how many times have I told you that I'm not? I'm your aunt. Understand. Why? Yang Nianxue grabbed Ding Xiaoyao's hand and said, Does Aunt Xiaoyao not like Daddy? The corners of Ding Xiaoyao's eyes twitched slightly, but she revealed a gentle smile and said, Who said that I liked him? Yang Nianxue raised her hand and started counting with her fingers. Mother, Aunt Xiao, Aunt Qin, Aunt An, and all of them no. Xianxia and the others couldn't help but chuckle while Yang Yi was quite embarrassed. Ding Xiaoyao's face flushed red as well. She pinched Yang Nianxue's cheeks again, and then she glared fiercely at Yang Yi before leaving the hall. Daddy, did I say something wrong? Aunt Ding seemed to be unhappy. Yang Nianxue felt quite sad. Yang Yi laughed bitterly, and then he kissed Yang Nianxue on the forehead and said, Oh, you! In the following days, all the profounders of Profounder Continent were turned into soldiers under Ding Xiaoyao's management. Of course, besides half-saints, all the others were just cannon fodder regardless of how numerous they were. However, Yang Yi and Ding Xiaoyao's objective wasn't to make them fight against the defiant Profounders and the hallowed grounds. They just wanted everyone to sense the danger that was approaching. Only by sensing danger and suffering that great pressure would many people work hard and do all they could to get stronger. At the moment of life and death, the potential of many could be stimulated without end. Yang Yi gave himself 10 days of rest. He didn't cultivate throughout those 10 days, and he didn't pay any attention to the matters within the city. He used all his time to accompany Yang Nianxue, Xianxia, and all his wives. Yang Yi felt quite a sense of guilt towards all of them. After all, he used most of his time cultivating or doing something or other. The time he stayed by their side could really be counted with his fingers. Moreover, he was very clearly aware that they were definitely extremely worried about him throughout this period that he'd gone to the hallowed grounds. But it couldn't be helped, because if he didn't work hard, then only death would be awaiting him. Early in the morning one day, Yang Yi was playing with Yang Nianxue in the backyard of the city governor's estate when Lu Wan'er suddenly appeared in front of him. Let's compete in the sword. She stared at him and didn't waste her breath at all. Yang Yi had quite a headache when he saw her. Since the day she saw him, she'd been asking him to compete with her in the sword every single day. Of course, it was naturally impossible for her to be a match for him. The main problem was that she would immediately look for him once she obtained new gains, even if it was late at night. Yang Yi could refuse her, of course, but he didn't. Because Lu Wan'er's natural talent in the sword Dao had truly shocked him. Less than 5 days had passed, yet she'd actually attained the 8th level of sword intent from the 7th. Even he couldn't help but feel embarrassed when facing such a speed of advancement. Xianxia pointed at the chair in front of him and said, "Wanna sit first?" She didn't sit and just looked at him. Xianxia shook his head and said, "I'm not telling you to sit so that I can talk nonsense. I'm going to talk with you about the sword." She immediately sat down. Xianxia said, "Can you tell me why your sword intent has improved so quickly? Moreover, you're usually able to cultivate a sword technique after just trying it once, become skilled at it on the first try, and grasp its essence on the third try. I'm really curious about it. Really, really curious." Lu Wanner fell silent for a long while before she said, "I don't know. All I know is I have an inexplainable feeling of closeness to swords. I even feel that I can communicate with swords. You're so strong. So don't you have such a feeling as well?" The corners of Xiangye's mouth twitched. That really hurts. Because he hadn't had such a feeling since he started cultivating in the sword. It was even to the extent that his natural talent in the sword Dao wasn't really good. Besides the sword spirit and the tiny vortex, he knew another reason why he was accomplished in the sword Dao. It was his character. He was very clearly aware of the strengths and flaws of his character. The flaw was that his character made it easy for him to offend others and make enemies, and he constantly courted death. As for its strengths, he was persistent. Once he decided on something, he would never turn back until he succeeded. Most importantly, it was his state of mind. He never allowed himself to have regrets or emotional burdens when he did things. If he had to fight, then he would fight. If he had to kill, then he would kill. To explain it simply, he'd seen clearly through his heart, and he'd gotten to know it. In the end, he acted according to it. Every single person had a demon within their hearts. However, that demon was usually in a suppressed state because of all sorts of external factors. Or perhaps, it could be said that some wouldn't admit that they had such a demon within their hearts. On the other hand, even if some admitted that such a demon existed in their hearts, they would suppress it due to all sorts of external factors. It wasn't that they feared they would harm others if they released that demon. They were afraid that releasing it would bring calamity upon themselves. So, most people would exercise forbearance when they encountered injustice. They would avoid it and run from it. As time passed, such people would lose their courage, and they would make all sorts of excuses as an explanation for their weakness and softness. Actually, those in the world who were truly strong usually kept a low profile. When one had strength, exercising forbearance towards the weak was considered a good state of mind. However, when one faced a stronger existence and still exercised forbearance, that wasn't a good state of mind. It was weakness. So, many people in the world bullied the weak and feared the strong. Why? Because the weak were easy to bully. Xianxia understood that principle a long time ago, so he absolutely refused to exercise forbearance. If you want to bully me, betray me, or harm me, then I'll repay it 10-fold, 100-fold, or even 1,000-fold. Benevolence is something that should be used on people, but many in this world can't be considered as people. There were many types of sword Daos. He took the path of slaughter, and he killed to resolve injustice. On the other hand, Lu Wanner clearly didn't possess a sword Dao of her own, yet her rate of improvement in sword intent and sword techniques had even surpassed him. After a long talk with her, Xianxia obtained an even deeper understanding of how terrifying her natural talent was. Because when she asked some questions about the sword Dao, he merely had to explain the beginning, and then she would practically understand the rest. Moreover, she was even able to raise some unique questions and views. Xianxia gazed silently at her for a long time. In the beginning, Lu Wanner was still very indifferent, but it wasn't long before she felt quite uncomfortable. She started to avoid his gaze and didn't dare meet his gaze. A long time passed like this. Right when Lu Wanner was about to be unable to endure his gaze, Xianxia withdrew a spatial ring and placed it before her. He said, "The inheritance in the sword Dao of a senior resides in this ring. I think that if even you aren't qualified to inherit his sword Dao, then there's probably no one in this world who is. There are some things he left you within it as well. I haven't looked through its contents. Now all of it is yours." She asked, "Was that senior very strong?" Xianxia nodded and said, "Very strong. Extremely strong. Lu Wanner nodded, and then she took the ring. She knew very well that since Yang Yi said that senior was extremely strong in the sword Dao, then that senior really was extremely strong. After his 10 days of rest passed, Yang Yi started cultivating like a madman, and he attained the 5th rank of the monarch realm after 20 days of insane cultivation. Meanwhile, trouble had appeared on Profounder Continent, because that terrifying person trapped beneath the heavenly lightning pool of the dragon race. That person hadn't emerged from the seal, but just the aura he emanated caused the entire territory of the dragon race to be destroyed. The demon territory. Besides the lightning pool, everything throughout the dragon race's territory was gone. Fortunately, none of the dragons were injured because Yang Yi had told the demon emperor about the terrifying existence beneath the lightning pool once the demon territory had fully allied with the human race. So, the dragons of the dragon race had withdrawn from their territory a very long time ago. Yang Yi, Lu Yen, and Elder Mu stood by the side of the lightning pool, and their faces had solemn expressions on them as they gazed at the ceaselessly roiling pool of lightning. Lu Yen suddenly said, "Actually, he should have been able to escape a long time ago." Yang Yi was puzzled and gazed at Lu Yen. The latter said, "Can you feel it? He's absorbing the earth veins here. Do you know what an earth vein is? It's a form of energy just like spirit energy. Some earth veins are inferior to spirit energy, but there are some that are countless times better than spirit energy. I've scanned the area. The earth vein here is much purer than spirit energy, but it's on the verge of drying up. How strong is he?" That was what Yang Yi was most concerned about, because this fellow was on Profounder Continent, so the slightest mishap might bring chaos to the continent. "I don't know," Lu Yen continued, "but based on the current situation, he's absolutely not a weakling." Yang Yi nodded. Actually, he knew because since the dragon race had stopped at nothing to seal that fellow all those years ago, it was impossible for him to be weak. But it didn't matter to him. After all, how strong could that fellow be in a world without saints? "Let's talk with him first. If we truly can't come to an agreement, then we'll end him." Lu Yen spoke flatly. Yang Yi nodded. They had Lu Yen, Elder Mu, the Stone of Suppression, and 21 half-saint puppets. Moreover, 2 of those puppets were mid-grade half-saints. If such a force couldn't defeat a single person that wasn't at the saint realm, then they would truly be failures. At this moment, the lightning pool seemed like boiling water, and it bubbled incessantly. At the same time, the ground around the pool had started to quake. Another short moment passed before countless strands of black energy suddenly seeped out from beneath the pool, and it wasn't long before the entire lightning pool was enveloped by black energy. "Looks like this fellow is a demon," said Lu Yen. "What's wrong with being a demon? I'm willing to be one." A voice resounded from within the black energy. It was quite an attractive voice, and it seemed like it carried charm that shook the heart and soul. Yang Ye's heart shook. His sword intent formed a thin barrier an inch away from him. At this moment, he realized that the fellow's strength was absolutely not inferior to Supreme Exalt He and Yin. "It's none of my business whether you're a demon or not, and I won't stop you from coming out as well. But you have to guarantee that you won't harm the living beings here if you do," said Yang Yi. Profounder Continent was united now, and it was part of his forces. If this fellow were to do as he pleased, then it would undoubtedly be equivalent to looking for trouble with him, and Yang Yi would absolutely not allow that to happen. "Guarantee," a disdainful voice resounded. "Who do you think you are to actually ask this king for a guarantee? I wasn't interested in the lives of those commoners, but now that you've said that, I just have to go bring calamity to them. It just so happens that I haven't killed for 100,000 years. I'm afraid it would feel unfamiliar to me, so I'll get used to it." "So you refuse to accept the compromise I'm willing to make?" Yang Ye's voice became cold. "If you think you're very strong, then come out here and fight us. Let's see if we can kill you or not. Ant, you'll pay for what you've said." An icy cold voice resounded from beneath the black energy. "You'll pay for your arrogance." It was Lu Yen who spoke these words, and he slapped his palm towards the black energy upon finishing. Bang! The surging black energy was instantly slapped down to the bottom of the pool, by the powerful force carried by Lu Yan's palm. However, there was no lightning pool there anymore. It was an enormous abyss that stood before them, and the bottomless abyss was filled with surging black energy. Moreover, strands of cold and terrifying aura were ceaselessly flowing out from within it. "You're not from this world." The mysterious person's voice resounded from below the black energy. Lu Yan said, "Now you know the strength we possess. So, do you think we can talk? If you think we can't, then don't waste your breath and just come and fight us." A long moment of silence ensued before the mysterious person's voice appeared once more from beneath the ground. "About what?" Lu Yan gazed at Yang Yi, and the latter nodded before he said, "The defiant profounders will emerge in a month from now, and war will ensue. Once that happens, the war will continue until either all the defiant profounders or all the inhabitants of this world are annihilated. There are three forces in this world now. The first is ours, profounder continent. Besides that, there's the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders. Which side do you belong to?" "The hallowed grounds." A voice that carried peerlessly terrifying and ghastly killing intent resounded abruptly. The killing intent within the voice seemed like 10,000-year-old ice, and it caused Yang Yi to be unable to help but shudder from its coldness. Obviously, that fellow beneath the ground definitely had great enmity with the hallowed grounds. It was obvious because the dragon race belonged to the hallowed grounds, and this fellow had been sealed by the dragon race. So, it was normal for there to be enmity between them. "I know what you're trying to say. I can avoid becoming enemies with you once I leave this place, but the dragon race must be annihilated. Not only the dragon race on profounder continent, the dragon race in the hallowed grounds as well. This king will annihilate them all," the mysterious person roared. Yang Yi shook his head and said, "You still haven't figured out the current situation you are in and the state of affairs right now. Regardless of whether it's my profounder continent or the hallowed grounds, do you think you can fight any one of us on your own? Don't tell me about how powerful you were all those years ago. All I know is that you're all alone now." "What are you trying to say?" said the mysterious person in a low voice. Yang Yi replied, "You can forget about doing anything to the dragon race of profounder continent, but you can do as you please to the dragon race in the hallowed grounds. I'll say it one last time. We'll turn around and leave if you agree to not cause trouble on the continent." It wasn't that Yang Yi didn't want to recruit that fellow, but he knew very well that the mysterious person beneath the ground was unlike Elder Mu and Lu Yan. How could an expert at such a level follow him? "What if I insist?" said the mysterious man in a low voice. "Then stay here forever." Boundless killing intent surged within Yang Ye's eyes. "Those two beside you are formidable indeed, but I'm afraid just the two of them aren't enough to kill me," said the mysterious person. Yang Yi waved his right hand, and then 21 half-saint sword servants appeared behind him. "I really don't want to waste any more time. Now I've changed my mind. It's better to eliminate an unstable factor like you." As he spoke, Yang Yi withdrew the stone of suppression and tossed it to Elder Mu, and then he commanded the 21 half-saint sword servants to jump down into the abyss. Elder Mu glanced at Yang Yi, and then he entered the abyss with Lu Yan. "The stone of suppression. Kid, who exactly are you?" "You actually possess the hallowed grounds stone of suppression." The mysterious person's astounded voice resounded from the bottom of the abyss. Bang, bang, bang. It didn't take long for explosions to resound from the bottom of the abyss, and the powerful waves of energy from the battle caused the abyss to enlarge incessantly. Merely a few breaths of time had passed before the abyss had enlarged over 100 times. "Stop! I think we can talk properly." The mysterious person's voice suddenly resounded from below. It wasn't long before Elder Mu, Lu Yan, and the 21 sword servants appeared before Yang Yi. Lu Yan shook his head and said, "We can't kill him." "A defiant profounder?" Yang Yi frowned. Elder Mu returned the stone of suppression to Yang Yi and said, "He isn't one, because he doesn't have the aura of a defiant profounder. However, he has their undying physique." "I get it now." Yang Yi gazed at the abyss and said, "You seized the body of a defiant profounder, right? How did you know that?" The voice carried a trace of shock and bewilderment. That's none of your business. Xianxia shrugged and said, Didn't you want to talk? Then let's talk. Xianxia realized that if something could be resolved with his fists, then it was best to not waste his breath. Because if one was strong enough, then the other would beg for a talk. We can work together, said the mysterious person. Xianxia was inwardly moved and said, Go on. Calamity is upon us. It's impossible for me to survive on my own. I can join forces with you against the hallowed grounds, the defiant profounders, and the outer heavens, replied the mysterious person. How will you convince me that you're sincere? Asked Xianxia. Lu Yen suddenly. Experts at his level disdain to lie. Xianxia nodded. Experts had their pride and honor. Even though that mysterious fellow had almost been killed, he hadn't begged for mercy, and that clearly showed how unyielding he was. After they dealt with that mysterious fellow, Xianxia immediately returned to ancient Domain City and started to cultivate madly once more. He'd intended to spar with a Nanjing, but unfortunately, she'd been in closed-door cultivation since he returned. Another month passed by. Xianxia ascended to the 6th rank of the Monarch realm with the assistance of a pile of energy stones and 1,000 fire crystals. However, he still couldn't draw the sword precursor. According to the sword spirit, his strength and cultivation were too low, and he could give it a try upon attaining the half-saint realm. The only thing he felt gratified about was the primordial violet energy within the primordial pagoda was increasing along with his cultivation, and a slightly insane thought appeared in Xiangye's mind. The hallowed grounds. At this moment, the hallowed grounds had turned all the experts here into soldiers just like Profounder Continent had. Moreover, the experts of all the races had gathered at the ancient city of Hallows under the Hallowed Lord's orders. So, the aura of experts surged through the sky and shook the world throughout the city. Xianxia was waiting. The hallowed grounds was waiting as well. They were all waiting for the defiant Profounders. Finally, the day came when a voice suddenly resounded through every single corner of the hallowed grounds. It has been 100,000 years. We're finally free of our fate. As soon as the voice finished resounding, bang! The pagoda of confinement exploded into pieces. From this day onward, the men, the earth, and the heavens here will face doom. A voice resounded once more through every corner of the hallowed grounds. Bang! A blood-red pillar shot into the sky, and then an enormous explosion resounded as the heavens and the earth trembled. After that, the sky dimmed down. The sky was clear no more. It had become blood-red, and endless blood-red light enveloped every single corner of the hallowed grounds. At this moment, everyone felt sorrow arise in their hearts. It was because the heaven Tao of this world had fallen. Every single world has a spirit of its own, and man called that spirit the heaven Tao. The heaven Tao had a will of its own, or it should be said to be a subconscious will. It instinctively acted against those who could threaten it. For example, it would send a heavenly tribulation down when others were attaining the saint realm because when a person was strong to a certain extent, that person could even pose a threat to it. There was no right or wrong. If the heaven Tao wanted to live, then it had to prevent many from becoming strong. If man wanted to live longer, then it had to fight against the heavens. Even then, many people still felt reverence towards the heavens because it fostered all living beings within its world. So, even if many people became extremely strong, they still wouldn't act against the heaven Tao. Just like the Sword Sect's founding ancestor hadn't. Yet now, the defiant Profounders had immediately killed the heaven Tao of this world upon emerging from the seal. It was a declaration of war. It was a declaration of war to all the living beings of this world. Because once the heaven Tao ceased to exist, then this world would quickly wither away and be completely destroyed. It was war that would only end with the death of one side. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the members of the hallowed grounds or Profounder Continent, they understood what the defiant Profounders wanted. As soon as the pagoda of confinement was destroyed, numerous black shadows shot up from beneath the ground, and as more and more defiant Profounders emerged to the surface, the terrifying auras that filled the area grew stronger and stronger. It didn't take long for the powerful auras emanated by the defiant profounders and the powerful auras of the experts in the ancient city of Hallows to respectively form an enormous black dragon and an enormous golden dragon that collided with each other in midair. Bang! The sky trembled as the enormous dragons shattered into pieces. Nirvana fist! A voice resounded from beneath the ground, and then a black fist shot into the sky. The fist suddenly changed directions in midair and smashed down towards the ancient city of Hallows. The fist wasn't very huge, and it was only the size of an ordinary fist, but it seemed to possess the strength to destroy the world. Everywhere it passed, space collapsed successively, and the vitality in its surroundings were completely exhausted. It seemed like it intended to destroy everything in its path. It hadn't even arrived before the city when the powerful force it carried caused the faces of countless people in the city to turn pale, because the vitality within them was actually flowing out of them as well. Starfall Point! A voice resounded from within the city as well, and then a golden finger flashed out of the city and collided with the fist. Bang! Thunderous rumbling resounded by the ears of everyone within the city, and it shook them to the point they felt piercing pain coming from their eardrums. Moreover, some even bled from all 7 apertures. Not bad. You're not inferior to your ancestor at all. A voice resounded from beneath the ground, and then a middle-aged man with a long braided ponytail appeared outside the city. Besides that, there were almost 10,000 people standing behind him. All of them were half-saints. The middle-aged man's braided ponytail was very long to the point it could touch the ground, and there was a saber hanging on his waist. The saber was around 1 m long and without a sheath. The blade of the saber seemed very ordinary, and it made it seem like an extremely ordinary saber. Besides that, the old man's eye sockets had no eyeballs within them, and they were just completely empty. This made him seem quite terrifying. There were 10 black-robed experts standing behind the middle-aged man, and there were both men and women amongst them. Of course, that wasn't the main point. The main point was that all of them were high-grade half-saints. I'm surprised that you actually brought all the defiant profounders under your control. A voice resounded from within the city. All those years ago, we were defeated one by the outer heavens, and you because we weren't united. Now you won't have such a chance, said the middle-aged man. You don't have your undying physiques anymore. The voice resounded once more from within the city. That's a form of release to us. The middle-aged man took a step forward and said, all of you can repay what your ancestors owed us all those years ago. All of you've gained freedom. Now it's time for us to gain the same. Bring it on. The entrance of the city was opened once these words finished resounding through the air, and then a man in a white robe who wore a white mask on his face walked out slowly. There were 15 experts walking behind him. All of them were high-grade half-saints, and Supreme Exalt He Inin and the blind old man were amongst them. Behind these 15 people were over 20,000 other half-saints. They didn't waste their breaths at all and immediately engaged each other in battle. The battle shook the heavens and the earth. Blood drenched the ground around the city and drenched the walls of the city as well, and the smell of blood could be smelled throughout the hallowed grounds. 3 days later, the hallowed grounds experts retreated to the ancient city of Hallows. The hallowed grounds left behind around 5,000 corpses of half-saints outside the city walls. But the defiant profounders hadn't even lost 1,000 of their members. The hallowed grounds had suffered a crushing defeat, and it could only rely on the 100,000-year-old formation around the city to defend itself from the defiant profounders. This time, everyone witnessed how terrifying and powerful the defiant profounders were. All of you are just children to us. The middle-aged man floated in the sky outside the city and looked down towards the city as he said, how can all of you who haven't even seen the world compare to the battle and dangers that we've experienced? The masked man appeared before the middle-aged man and said, I admit that I really did underestimate all of you. The middle-aged man pointed at the ancient city of Hallows and said, I remember this formation was called the Heavenly Barrier Formation, and it was placed here by those fellows from the outer heavens. We can break through it by force, but we would suffer heavy losses. It's fine, we can afford to wait. When he spoke up to this point, the middle-aged man turned around and left. At the same time, his voice resounded once more. It has been 100,000 years. All of you've suffered for 100,000 years. Don't you want a vent? Roar. All the defiant profounders howled before they transformed into black shadows that shot off in all directions. Not all the members of the various races had moved to the ancient city of Hallows, and it was only their elite forces that had come to the city. Meanwhile, the comparatively weaker members of the various races were still residing in their own territories. So, it was a slaughter, an absolute slaughter. The hallowed grounds was once a paradise. Yet now, it had become hell, and the ancient city of Hallows became the last safe place throughout the hallowed grounds. Profounder continent. Xianxia locked himself in his room, and there were 8 stone coffins laid out in front of him. Xianxia had excitement on his face right now. He was extremely excited, because he noticed that the terrifying black worm had vanished from their bodies. In other words, he could refine them into sword servants. The sword spirit and the 21 half-saint sword servants were by his side. After all, he naturally had to take precautions against them coming to life and waking up. To his surprise, they didn't come to life. Moreover, they were completely devoid of vitality. Xianxia pondered deeply for a long time yet couldn't figure anything out. But it wasn't important because he was about to possess 8 mid-grade half-saint sword servants. Xianxia was quite skilled in refining sword servants, so it only took him a day to complete their transformation into sword servants. Coupled with the 2 existing mid-grade half-saint sword servants he possessed, he had 10 mid-grade half-saint sword servants and 19 ordinary half-saint sword servants now. Of course, he was very clearly aware that this little bit of strength was far from sufficient to face the defiant profounders and hallowed grounds. So, he decided to take a risk. He intended to provide the primordial violet energy he possessed to those half-saint sword servants. He didn't dare give it to Elder Mu or Lu Yen. It wasn't that he didn't trust them. Conversely, he really trusted Elder Mu. However, primordial violet energy carried great implications. After all, what would it represent if a saint appeared in this world? It represented that primordial violet energy existed in this world. But all the violet energy of this world had been exhausted. So where did it come from? At that time, it wouldn't just be the hallowed ground and defiant profounders that targeted profounder continent. Even the outer heavens would act. Elder Mu could sweep through the defiant profounders and the hallowed grounds upon attaining the saint realm. But could he sweep through the outer heavens? He couldn't. Moreover, profounder continent would have no chance at survival if the outer heavens disregarded everything and acted against them. Besides that, a treasure that could produce primordial violet energy was definitely something that the outer heavens would disregard everything to seize. It wasn't that he refused to let Elder Mu and Lu Yen attain the saint realm. It just wasn't the right time yet. Xianxia witnessed how terrifying primordial violet energy was again. As soon as they started cultivating with primordial violet energy, the auras of those half-saint sword servants were growing stronger at practically every moment. Such progress made Xianxia feel overjoyed, but his heart hurt as well, because he'd accumulated all that violet energy for a very, very long time. 3 days later, the 19 ordinary half-saint sword servants had become mid-grade half-saints. On the other hand, the 10 mid-grade half-saints were still mid-grade half-saints. However, their auras were many times stronger than before. While they were still mid-grade half-saints, every single one of them could fight 2 to 3 experts like the patriarch of the fire spirit race on their own. Xianxia names those 10 sword servants his super war generals. As for the other mid-grade half-saint sword servants, while they were similarly mid-grade half-saints like the 10 super war generals, they weren't as strong as the super war generals. Xianxia had intended to cultivate and improve his cultivation in order to obtain even more primordial violet energy, so that he could improve his sword servants. Unfortunately, trouble had arrived. Mu Qingfeng had arrived on Profounder Continent. But she wasn't alone. She had come with 2 defiant profounders. To be precise, she was being pursued by 2 defiant profounders. They were originally just pursuing her, but once they noticed the continent, one of them had actually abandoned Mu Qingfeng and started to kill without restraint. Xianxia left his room and looked up into the sky. What's coming will come. It can't be avoided. His figure transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the sky. The defiant profounders had emerged from the seal, so a world war was inevitable. It was impossible for Profounder Continent to avoid it. So, Yang Yi wasn't surprised when he found out that defiant Profounders had arrived at Profounder Continent. Yang Yi did feel worried, because every single defiant Profounder was at the Half-Saint realm, and there were almost 10,000 of them. What would they do if such a terrifying force came to Profounder Continent? It was absolutely impossible for them to fight such a force. However, Yang Yi was prepared. If Profounder Continent really did suffer calamity, then he would immediately allow Elder Mu and Lu Yen to attain the Saint Realm. Because he would definitely be an idiot if he was worrying about this, and that, at a time like that. The Southern Sea. Mu Qingfeng fled in the direction of ancient Domain City upon arriving at Profounder Continent. She'd risen her speed to its limits, so she seemed like a breeze that swept through the air. Even then, she was still obstructed. It was a defiant Profounder who stood in her path. "Little girl, your speed isn't bad. You actually made me chase you for so long." The defiant Profounder who spoke these words seemed to be only around the age of 20. He seemed very young, but his voice was quite aged, and it sounded like he was a few hundred years old. The profound energy within Mu Qingfeng surged as she spoke coldly. "This is Profounder Continent. You still have time to turn around and return to the hallowed grounds. You might not be able to return if you linger a little longer. Are you trying to scare me?" The man laughed with ridicule and said, "The spirit energy here is so scarce that it's simply in the worst state I've ever seen. It's utterly impossible for any experts to be born here. Even if there are, would I have to fear them? Not only am I not going back, I'm going to slaughter everyone here. Weren't your ancestors trying to protect this continent? Now, I'll destroy it. And I'll even annihilate all their descendants at the same time." As he spoke, he raised his right hand with the intention of attacking. Mu Qingfeng's eyelids twitched when she saw that. She was naturally no match for this old fellow. But she wasn't prepared to submit either. She was just about to fight desperately to the death when her eyes suddenly lit up, and she looked towards the area behind that defiant Profounder and said, "Young man!" Yang Yi had suddenly appeared behind the man, and he was slightly stunned when he heard her call him young man. After that, he nodded to her. Even though he was hostile to the hallowed grounds, he wasn't hostile to Lunar Right Hall, Mu Qingfeng, Nether Maiden, and the others. The man turned around to gaze at Yang Yi, and he sized Yang Yi up for a moment before he said, "The 6th rank of the Monarch Realm? Ha! Have you come here to give your life away?" Yang Yi said, "Actually, I had no hostility towards the defiant Profounders. After all, Qin Bufan seemed to be quite a nice guy. However, I have to say that I was wrong. I heard what you said just now, and I really want to say that it was the outer heavens and the experts from 100,000 years ago who sealed all of you. All of you lost all those years ago. Your skills were inferior, so you deserved punishment. Yet now, you intend to take revenge on the later generations. That's truly despicable. They are just the beginning of our revenge." The man raised his hand slowly, pointed it at Yang Yi, and then said, "Your aura is very strong. Since you're able to remain so composed while standing before me, I presume you're quite confident in your strength. Come, let me see how strong a 6th rank Monarch Realm Profounder is." As he spoke, he suddenly made a clawing motion towards Yang Yi. The space around Yang Yi suddenly constricted as if it was being squashed. Meanwhile, a ray of light flashed. Hiss! The man's figure stiffened on the spot, and there was a bleeding hole on his chest. As for Yang Yi, he was standing behind the man now. Mu Qingfeng was stunned. He instantly killed him. He instantly killed a half-saint. She gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief. Not too long ago, Yang Yi had killed a half-saint as well, but he hadn't accomplished it with such ease. Yet now, a defiant Profounder had been killed just like that with a single swing of his sword. The man's eyes were filled with disbelief. 2nd level heaven rank sword intent. Impossible. Even if you possess 2nd level heaven rank sword intent, it's impossible for your sword to be so swift, and it's impossible for it to be so strong. Yang Yi didn't explain anything to him, of course. He'd utilized the critical strike and lightspeed techniques earlier, and he'd even utilized the mortal sword of the tri-apex sword technique. While it seemed to be a single swing of his sword, it had exhausted around 20% of his profound energy. That was an attack that he put his entire strength into. He hadn't fought a drawn-out battle with the defiant profounder but had immediately executed his strongest attack. His objective was naturally to avoid wasting time. Besides that, he didn't want that defiant profounder to flee, because it was another half-saint sword servant to him. Xianxia waved his right hand, and he placed the corpse into the primordial pagoda. Meanwhile, a ray of black light flashed over through the sky. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly as he flicked his finger, and a strand of sword energy shot out and collided with the black light. Bang! The black light and the sword energy dispersed at the same time, and then a man who held a saber in his hand appeared not too far away from Xianxia and Mu Qingfeng. He's a defiant profounder. He was pursuing me along with that fellow whom you just killed. However, he left alone upon arriving at Profounder Continent. He probably went to kill. Mu Qingfeng spoke in a low voice. Actually, Ding Xiaoyao was aware of their arrival the moment the three of them had arrived at Profounder Continent. However, she didn't send anyone to pursue the defiant profounders because it was pointless to send ordinary experts. On the other hand, Elder Mu and Lu Yen were in closed-door cultivation. So, she had no other choice but to notify Xianxia. As far as she was concerned, while he was only at the 6th rank of the monarch realm, it was definitely not a problem for him to deal with two defiant profounders. If it was a problem, then Xianxia would have definitely not headed to the hallowed grounds before he even attained the monarch realm and even came back alive. How audacious! You actually dared to kill him. The man's voice carried dense killing intent. I'll make you. How many did you kill just now? Xianxia suddenly interrupted him. Not many. Just around 10,000. He laughed savagely. But don't worry. I'll kill even more in a while. Xianxia shook his head. The resentment and hatred from being sealed for 100,000 years has caused their minds to be filled with the intent to kill, yet I actually intended to talk with them. It seems like that's absolutely impossible. At the very least, it's absolutely impossible until I beat some sense into them. Xianxia didn't waste his breath. The profound energy within him surged into his sword, and then he instantly vanished on the spot. When he appeared once more, he was already right in front of the man while his sword had stabbed into the man's chest. He instantly killed a half-saint again. Mu Qingfeng's mind had gone blank. These defiant profounders who were insufferably arrogant in the hallowed grounds aren't even able to fight back before him. You! The man wanted to say something, but he had no chance. Xianxia's sword shook slightly and the vitality within the man was instantly drained. While he seemed to have instantly annihilated two defiant profounders with ease, only Xianxia knew how difficult it had been. At this moment, his countenance was slightly pale while his body even felt empty, because only less than a third of his profound energy remained. If a few more defiant profounders were to arrive at this moment, then all he could do was either summon his sword servants to group up against them or flee. After he put the corpse away, Xianxia turned around to gaze at Mu Qingfeng. At this moment, Mu Qingfeng's eyes were still filled with shock, and she only recovered from it after Xianxia looked at her. She said, You are actually so strong." Xianxia shook his head and said, "How's the situation at the hallowed grounds right now?" She replied solemnly, "Very bad." "How bad is it?" asked Xianxia. She laughed bitterly and shook her head before she told him about the situation at the hallowed grounds. A short while passed before Xianxia's face gradually became solemn as well, and he said, "You're saying that the hallowed grounds lost almost 5,000 half-saints, yet the defiant profounders merely lost around 1,000? She nodded. "We never expected them to actually be that strong. Even though those two from before were very strong as well, they're nobodies amongst the defiant profounders. The combat strength possessed by many defiant profounders is simply shocking, and they're even able to absorb our cultivations. They get stronger the more they kill, especially when they kill half-saints. To put it simply, they grow endlessly stronger in battle. That really is a little too strong." Xianxia shook his head. After all, 5,000 half-saints had been lost in exchange for the deaths of just around 1,000 defiant profounders. He really wanted to ask her if she was sure that those 5,000 half-saints weren't just monarch realm experts. At this moment, he felt fortunate that he'd immediately utilized his full strength against them. Otherwise, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to kill them. Mu Qingfeng suddenly said, "I came on orders from the hallowed grounds." Yang Yi pondered deeply for a long time before he said, "They want profounder continent to side with them?" Mu Qingfeng shook her head and said, "No. The hallowed halls wants both our sides to work together. You've seen the attitude of the defiant profounders. They're utter madmen, and they won't stop until they kill every single living being in this world. Once our hallowed grounds is defeated, their next target will definitely be profounder continent. At that time, profounder continent wouldn't be able to stop them at all. Besides that, they might not destroy the hallowed grounds first and attack profounder continent first instead." "Why?" Yang Yi frowned. Mu Qingfeng replied, "They can absorb the cultivations of others to strengthen themselves. They're slaughtering others for the sake of taking revenge and venting their anger, but the main reason is because killing will strengthen them. The ancient city of Hallows has a formation to protect it and a divine talisman master. So the defiant profounders can't break into the ancient city of Hallows. But what about profounder continent? If they come to profounder continent, then their cultivations will." Yang Ye's expression suddenly changed drastically when he spoke up to this point, because those two fellows from before were still at the half-saint realm. Their cultivations hadn't dropped at all. The heaven Tao is gone, so all barriers shall cease to exist. Mu Qingfeng looked Yang Yi in the eye as she spoke. Yang Ye's expression became extremely solemn when he heard this. The barrier between the hallowed grounds and profounder continent was gone. What did that represent? It represented that it would be extremely easy for both the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders to attack profounder continent. Yang Yi had decided to work together with the hallowed grounds when he heard up to this point. He would absolutely not work together with them if he was all alone. He was confident to face everything with just his sword in his hand. Yet now, he had to think for the others on profounder continent who were on his side. He could take his loved ones with him and flee, and he had the ability to protect himself, but what about the others on the continent? For example, the Ding clan, the Qin clan, the disciples of the Sword Sect, and many others who were following him. Would they be able to flee? Definitely not. They wouldn't even be able to fight back against the defiant profounders. In Yang Ye's opinion, it wasn't a burden but a responsibility, and a man should shoulder his responsibilities. "What did the hallowed halls say before they sent you?" asked Yang Yi. "They are willing to let bygones be bygones," she replied. "The hallowed lord said that regardless of what enmity there is between you and the hallowed grounds, they are willing to forget all of it. He even said that while the hallowed grounds wanted to kill you in the past, it only wanted to kill you alone and had never slaughtered the others on the continent. But the defiant profounders are different. They'll slaughter everyone on the continent besides other defiant profounders." "I took the stone of suppression," said Yang Yi. She replied, "It's yours from now onward." Yang Yi continued, "Many people in the hallowed grounds want to see me dead." She answered, "No one will dare to act against you without permission." Yang Yi fell silent. He knew that the severity of the situation in the hallowed grounds was probably beyond his imagination. Otherwise, it was impossible for the hallowed grounds to make such concessions. Yang Yi wasn't an indecisive person, so he immediately said, "I'll head to the hallowed grounds with you once I finish handling some things here." Even though there was no conflict between him and the defiant profounders for now, Yang Yi knew that it would occur sooner or later. The defiant profounders had gone mad, and they wouldn't return to normal without killing. Moreover, killing could improve their strength, so why would they stop? He would definitely be asking for insult if he sought to negotiate and talk with the defiant profounders, because they would definitely pay no attention to him. The anxiousness Mu Qingfeng felt was finally relieved when she heard this. The reason the hallowed grounds had sent her was because she and Lunar Right Hall had quite a good relationship with Yang Yi. So, if they sent anyone else, then that person might have been killed before that person could even speak. As far as the hallowed grounds was concerned, Yang Yi was absolutely capable of such a thing. Mu Qingfeng returned to ancient domain city with Yang Yi. When she arrived there, she finally realized how influential Yang Yi was here. Practically everyone here had blind confidence and adoration for Yang Yi. It was like profounder continent would never fall while he was there. I've decided to join forces with the hallowed grounds. These were the first words that Yang Yi spoke once he met Ding Xiaoyao. He always discussed everything with her. It was a form of trust and respect. You've decided? Ding Xiaoyao wasn't very surprised. As far as she was concerned, joining forces with the hallowed grounds was inevitable. Because amongst the three forces in this world, the might of the defiant profounders had practically surpassed the joint forces of the hallowed grounds and profounder continent. If the hallowed grounds and profounder continent still didn't join forces under such circumstances, then only death would await them. Yang Yi nodded and said, "What do you think? That's our one and only choice, and it's the hallowed grounds' only choice as well," said Ding Xiaoyao. Yang Yi said, "Since you agree, then it's decided. Once I've left, ask Elder Mu and Senior Lu to guard the teleportation formation that leads to the hallowed grounds and don't allow any defiant profounders to come to the continent. Those madmen start slaughtering the moment they arrive, so kill every single one that comes here. Ask Elder Mu to preserve their corpses once they are dead." Suddenly, a wave of fluctuation appeared in the space before Ding Xiaoyao. A short while passed before killing intent arose in her eyes. She said, 10 defiant profounders have arrived at Profounder Continent. Just as you said, they are slaughtering the oceanic clans. Even we have lost a huge amount of people. I've told the rest to hide." Meanwhile, Mu Qingfeng said, "They probably arrived here by accident. You must eliminate them as soon as possible. Otherwise, once they notify even more defiant profounders, then Profounder Continent will have to pay a horrifying price." A vicious glow flashed through Yang Ye's eyes. "I haven't even gone looking for them, yet they've come to look for me. Xiaoyao, I'll leave the continent to you and Bairu. Qingfeng, let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi and Mu Qingfeng's figures vanished. Ding Xiaoyao's expression grew more and more solemn as she looked up into the sky. She knew that Profounder Continent would cease to be peaceful from this moment onward. The oceanic clans. At this moment, the ocean was dyed red with blood, while countless corpses floated on the surface of the ocean, and they formed a dense expanse that covered the ocean. Bang! Suddenly, a pillar of water surged up from below, and then a group of profounders with the upper bodies of humans and the lower bodies of fish shot out from within the pillar of water. "Qianlan, head for ancient domain city. Quickly!" A hysterical voice resounded from deep beneath the ocean, but it didn't take long for it to vanish. 2 streams of tears flowed out from the eyes of the woman in midair, who was surrounded by a group of profounders from the mermaid clan. When those tears flowed down her face, they transformed into pearls, but when they dropped to the ocean, they transformed into ice. "Princess, leave, quickly." An old man from the mermaid clan spoke anxiously to the woman called Qianlan. "Quickly head to ancient domain city. Yang Yi has returned to Profounder Continent. He'll definitely be able to protect you." "Yang Yi? Protect all of you? What a joke." A figure shot out from beneath the ocean, and a man appeared before them. "Why have you slaughtered the oceanic clans?" Qianlan stared fixedly at the man. "Everyone in this world deserves death." The man walked slowly towards Qianlan and the others. He said, "Don't worry. I won't kill you because I sense that you seem to be unlike the others. As for what's different about you, I don't know the answer now, but I'll find out sooner or later. Of course, that isn't the main reason. The main reason is I haven't been with a woman for so long." Qianlan stared fixedly at him and said, "Are you even worthy of that?" "I..." The man intended to say something, but his voice stopped abruptly. Snowflakes had appeared in an area of 500 m. Boundless snowflakes. After these snowflakes appeared, the temperature in the area suddenly dropped by 1,000 degrees. The ocean was frozen. Besides the small area in space around Qianlan, everything else was frozen. At this moment, even that defiant profounder who was a half-saint was frozen. and there was only some color in his eyes. It was an expression of terror. Bang! Suddenly, 5 figures charged out from beneath the frozen ocean. Break! Along with this shout, cracking resounded as the ice in the surroundings instantly shattered into bits. As for the snowflakes, they were blasted apart by the voice as well. Besides that, the defiant profounder who Qianlong had frozen was transformed into bits of ice as well. I never expected that I would meet another person from the Nether Pavilion. A black-robed man who held a feather fan walked over to Qianlong's group. The man sized her up, and then he shook his head and said, "Looks like you've only awakened less than 10% of your strength. You're much weaker than that Nether maiden in the ancient city of Hallows. No wonder you were concealing your strength. The mermaid clan never harmed all of you." Qianlong's voice carried a trace of ferocity. "But all of you didn't spare them. All of you truly deserve death. All of you are the ones who deserve death." Killing intent arose in the man's eyes. 100,000 years. Do you know how it feels to be sealed for 100,000 years? You don't. You'll never experience such a feeling. We'll use the blood of this entire world and everyone in the outer heavens to wash away the pain we've endured. The slaughter has only just begun. All of you won't succeed. Qianlong stared fixedly at the man. He chuckled lightly and said, "No one can stop us. Even the strongest power in this world, the hallowed grounds, can't stop us. All right, I don't want to waste my breath on you anymore. Instead of allowing the people of the other halls to devour you, isn't it better to let me devour you? At the very least, I'll give you a swift death. Are all of you the ones who killed those people down there?" Right when the man with a feather fan was about to attack, a voice resounded from behind him. The man's eyes narrowed slightly and turned around with the others. A woman and a man who held a sword and carried a damaged sword had suddenly appeared behind them. They were naturally Yang Yi and Mu Qingfeng. Even though he was speaking to the man with a feather fan, Yang Ye's gaze was on the surface of the ocean. There were countless corpses that formed a dense mass throughout the ocean, and they filled the ocean until the ends of his vision. Moreover, the ocean water was scarlet red like blood, and the smell of blood was even suffocating to him. It was us. So, the man sized up Yang Yi and spoke indifferently. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while he tightened his grasp on his sword. He'd killed as well, but he only killed his enemies, and he wouldn't go mad and start killing people at random. However, these defiant profounders were killing for the sake of killing. They wanted the deaths of every single living being in this world, and it included him, Yang Yi, and everyone he cared about. Since the moment that the defiant profounders emerged from the seal, he was actually bound to become enemies with them. After all, wouldn't ancient domain city become a city filled with death if they went there? "I sense danger from you," the man said. "But it's fine, because you'll be dying soon. No, I'll make it worse than death for you, because I really hate you. I hate it when people try to act calm and composed in front of me as if everything is within their control." The man was about to attack while he spoke. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked towards an island a few hundred meters from here, and he frowned. "They noticed so quickly? Damn it. I can't enjoy this place on my own." It wasn't long before numerous black shadows shot out from the distant island, and they rushed towards Yang Yi and the others. Mu Qingfeng's pupils constricted when she witnessed this scene. She said, "It's the defiant profounders. Many of them have discovered the teleportation formation that leads to profounder continent. Haha, so much life. It's even more than the hallowed grounds. I'm going to kill to my heart's content." The voice of the black-robed man who led the group in the distance resounded from afar. Suddenly, a sword howl shot into the sky. Everyone here looked towards where Yang Yi stood, but Yang Yi had vanished from there. They were astonished by this scene and hurriedly looked off into the horizon. They saw the black shadow that led the group was falling down from the sky, but a ray of light flashed when the black figure almost fell into the ocean, and then he vanished. All the spectators here were astounded, even the man with a feather fan. He was killed in an instant. He instantly annihilated a defiant profounder at the half-saint realm with a single swing of his sword. All of their expressions turned extremely solemn. Yang Yi was about to launch another attack, but the man with a feather fan and the other 4 defiant profounders obstructed Yang Ye's path. At the same time, another 10 black figures descended behind the man with a feather fan. 15 defiant profounders. They didn't attack, and they just stared fixedly at Yang Yi. While they wanted to kill him, they were no fools. Since this fellow standing before them had been able to instantly annihilate a companion of theirs, it represented that his strength far surpassed any one of them. "Who are you?" asked the man in a low voice. Yang Yi said, "I actually felt quite a bit of pity for all of you. After all, you were sealed for 100,000 years. But now, I don't feel even a shred of pity. If I were born 100,000 years earlier, I would have definitely annihilated all of you. The hallowed grounds was terrible, but the defiant profounders were worse. After all, the hallowed grounds only wanted to kill Yang Yi and the people related to Yang Yi, but they had no intention of destroying the continent. However, the defiant profounders were different. They truly desired to destroy the continent. Could he let them destroy the continent? The answer was no, of course. His loved ones and those who stood by his side resided on profounder continent. If the hallowed grounds wanted to destroy the continent, then he would annihilate the hallowed grounds. If the defiant profounders wanted to destroy the continent, then he would annihilate the defiant profounders. "You're very strong, so I'm not confident in my ability to kill you," the man with a feather fan spoke fiercely. "However, there's 15 of us. Can you fight all 15 of us?" Yang Yi shook his head while a wisp of disdain flashed through his eyes. He said, "Even though Qin Bufan is a defiant profounder as well, he has his pride, and he has never shown any fear even if he encounters those who were stronger than him. But all of you, looks like there are outstanding people and trash amongst the defiant profounders. It just so happens that all of you are the trash. You want to compete in numbers? Then let's compete." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi waved his right hand and the 29 half-saint sword servants he had appeared by his side. 29 mid-grade half-saints. Qianlong and Mu Qingfeng's pupils constricted when they witnessed this scene, and there was disbelief in their eyes. On the other hand, the expressions of the defiant profounders here changed drastically. They gazed at Yang Ye's sword servants with astonishment. "Kill them all!" Yang Yi didn't waste his breath and ordered the sword servants to attack. The 29 half-saint sword servants immediately pounced at the defiant profounders. It didn't take long for Yang Ye's brows to gradually knit together. Because while the sword servants had the advantage in numbers, they were actually unable to gain even the slightest advantage in the battle. On the contrary, the defiant profounders showed signs of gaining the upper hand instead. All 29 of those sword servants were mid-grade half-saints. However, even the strongest amongst the defiant profounders here, the man with the feather fan, was only a mid-grade half-saint. I finally realized that it isn't the defiant profounders who are weak. It's you who is too strong. Mu Qingfeng spoke in a serious tone. Yang Ye's ability to instantly annihilate defiant profounders in succession had made her feel that the defiant profounders seemed to have become weaker. Now, she understood that the defiant profounders hadn't become weaker, and it was Yang Yi who was too strong. At this moment, Yang Yi realized that the defiant profounders weren't weak at all, and they could even be considered to be extremely strong. Not only were they capable of fighting 2 of his sword servants with ease, they even showed signs of suppressing those sword servants. If he hadn't used his strongest attack every single time before this, then it would have been utterly impossible for him to kill the defiant profounders. In the end, besides his own strength, the reason he could instantly kill the defiant profounders was because they'd underestimated him. Indeed, they would underestimate him when they noticed that he was only at the 6th rank of the monarch realm, and it was usually too late for them to put up their guard once he drew his sword. Because Yang Ye's sword was very swift and very powerful, Yang Yi joined the battle as well. Just as he'd expected, it was quite difficult for him to deal with them if he didn't utilize the critical strike technique, light speed, and the tri-apex sword technique. Of course, even if he didn't use his strongest attack, it was impossible for them to defeat him while he relied on his peak 12th level sword intent, the Herculean armor, and his physical defense and strength. Once Yang Yi joined the battle, the situation was instantly turned around because the defiant profounders started to fall. In less than 15 minutes, only 5 of the defiant profounders remained while Yang Yi had another 25 sword servants. He'd been able to accomplish this because he'd joined the battle and kept them busy. Otherwise, all 29 of his sword servants might have been annihilated. Let's head back to the hallowed grounds. The man with a feather fan ordered with a savage expression on his face. Because even he would die here if they continued fighting. The other 4 defiant profounders didn't dare continue fighting as well, and they immediately intended to retreat. Trash! Suddenly, a furious shout resounded from the horizon. It rumbled like lightning and rippled through space. Their expressions changed slightly when they heard this voice, but the defiant profounders didn't dare retreat again. Yang Ye's expression had changed slightly as well. A black-robed man had appeared before him, and the old man had a sword servant in his hand. The sword servant was like a helpless little chick in the old man's hand, and it couldn't resist at all. Bang! An explosion resounded as the sword servant was transformed into ashes. Yang Ye's heart shook. While the feeling the black-robed old man gave him wasn't capable of rivaling Supreme Exalt He or Inin, he still sensed extremely threatened by the old man. It's an elder-level expert of the defiant profounders. Mu Qingfeng spoke solemnly. The strongest amongst the defiant profounders is the one called the Saber Emperor, Su Qinya. Beneath him are the 10 divine generals. Every single one of them is a high-grade half-saint that are equal to experts like Supreme Exalt He. Further beneath the hierarchy are the elders. I don't know exactly how many elders there are, but every single one of them wears a black robe. According to the Hallowed Grounds estimates, they should be high-grade half-saints as well. However, they are inferior to the 10 divine generals, and it's probably because of their own cultivation techniques and natural talent. The black-robed old man glanced at Yang Yi, and then his gaze shot towards the distance. It was in the direction of the Southern Territory. It was towards ancient Domain City. I never imagined that there would actually be so many living beings here. A wisp of greed flashed through his eyes. This really is a paradise. It will be your hell. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi suddenly drew the intense sword within the ancient sheath. An array of light shot towards the black-robed old man. He'd executed Heaven Rend. 20 overlapped Heaven Rends enhanced by the critical strike technique and light speed. This was his actual strongest attack. The sword energy tore through space, and it arrived in front of the black-robed old man in less than an instant. The old man's expression instantly changed drastically when he saw this attack. He knew that he'd truly underestimate this ant before him who was only at the monarch realm. Bang! The old man was blasted flying, and he flew for almost 3 kilometers before his figure finally stopped. The other defiant profounders were flabbergasted. How dare you! The old man's furious howl resounded from the horizon, and then a withered claw tore through space and clawed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this attack. He'd thought that his strongest attack would be able to kill the black-robed old man, but he hadn't expected that he'd merely been able to injure the old man. Just this outcome allowed Yang Yi to instantly understand that the old man's strength far surpassed his own. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and swiftly drew his sword again. A ray of sword energy shot out from the ancient sheath and smashed against the withered claw, causing an enormous explosion before both attacks dispersed in midair. Yang Yi withdrew the stone of suppression. He was utterly incapable of surmounting his realm of cultivation to defeat a high-grade half-saint without it. The black-robed old man who was about to launch another attack seemed to be slightly stunned when Yang Yi withdrew the stone of suppression, and then a solemn expression appeared in his eyes. It's actually the stone of suppression. It's actually in your possession. No wonder the Hallowed Grounds didn't utilize it during the battle with us that day. Right when Yang Yi was about to attack, another black shadow shot out from the island in the distance. Another defiant profounder? At this moment, it wasn't just Yang Yi who frowned. Even the black-robed old man and the other defiant profounders frowned as well. Numerous black shadows shot out from the island, and only a moment passed before over 40 defiant profounders appeared before Yang Yi. All of them were slightly stunned when they saw the black-robed old man and the others. Obviously, they hadn't expected to see the black-robed old man and the others here. Xianxia's brows knit even more tightly together when he saw them act in this way. His intuition told him that something was wrong. "What are all of you doing here?" asked the black-robed old man in a low voice. One of them replied, "We were pursuing a fellow who fled from the hallowed grounds." The black-robed old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he gazed at the man who held a feather fan and said, "What about you?" He pointed at Mu Qingfeng and said, "We were pursuing her." Suddenly, a wave of spatial fluctuation arose behind Yang Yi, and then both Elder Mu and Lu Yen appeared by Yang Ye's side. The expressions of the black-robed old man and the others changed once more when they saw Lu Yen and Elder Mu, and then the old man spoke in a serious tone. "I understand now. The hallowed grounds drew us over here on purpose. They want us and these people from profounder continent to fight and kill each other. The hallowed grounds led the defiant profounders here on purpose. They are diverting the calamity they face to profounder continent, and they are using both our sides to kill each other." Yang Ye's expression was extremely unsightly. Suddenly, Lu Yen and Elder Mu suddenly turned to look towards ancient domain city, and Lu Yen said, "Shit! An expert who's not from profounder continent has appeared in the city." "Is it a defiant profounder?" asked Yang Yi. "It's a member of the hallowed grounds. We've been tricked. The hallowed grounds doesn't want to bury the hatchet with you. They want profounder continent and the defiant profounders to fight each other before they reap the benefits." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Yen vanished on the spot. But it wasn't long before he appeared in front of Yang Yi again. However, he had quite an unsightly expression on his face. Someone from the hallowed grounds created a spatial passageway, and two supreme experts came to the city. They took Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao. If I hadn't returned in time, then even Su Qingshi and Xiao Yushi would probably have been captured by them as well. Lu Yen spoke in a low voice. Before they left, they said that if you want to save the two of them, then you must head to the hallowed grounds, and you must bring the stone of suppression along. Mu Qingfeng instantly revealed shock and terror in her eyes when she heard Lu Yen. "Looks like I was still too naive." Yang Yi took a deep breath and said, "The hallowed grounds. Good. Very good." Yang Ye's voice was very calm, but everyone here felt a strand of indescribable coldness. "So the hallowed grounds wanted to use us to crush profounder continent." Meanwhile, the black-robed old man suddenly said, "You've been used by the hallowed grounds, and so have we. Wouldn't we be allowing the hallowed grounds to succeed if we were to fight and kill each other? How about we retreat from profounder continent right now? Kill them." It was Yang Yi who spoke these words. Forgive and forget? What a joke. They'd naturally chosen to do that because Elder Mu and Lu Yen were here. Once they were allowed to leave, it would absolutely be no different than breeding calamity for the future. Moreover, when the defiant profounders arrived here again, it wouldn't be just a few dozen, it would be thousands. In his opinion, the hallowed grounds was his enemy, and the defiant profounders were his enemy as well. Elder Mu and Lu Yen didn't hesitate to attack. "Do you really think we fear you? I'll definitely wash the entire continent in blood once I've killed all of you today." The black-robed old man roared furiously, and then a huge explosion resounded in the horizon. "Yang Yi!" Mu Qingfeng gazed at Yang Yi, and there was shock, terror, and vigilance in her eyes. Yang Yi waved his hand and said, "You can leave. You aren't going to kill me?" Mu Qingfeng revealed a trace of surprise in her eyes. "Were you aware of their true intentions?" Yang Yi gazed at Mu Qingfeng as he asked this question. She shook her head and said, "They really did send me here to see peace with profounder continent. But now it would seem like that wasn't their objective. It was merely to utilize the relationship between my lunar right hall and you to trick into going to the hallowed grounds. If the defiant profounders hadn't arrived here, then you should probably be at the hallowed grounds by now. At that time, coupled with the fact that your loved ones would be in their hands, they would threaten you to fight on their behalf even if they don't kill you. Send a message to the hallowed grounds for me. Tell them that I'll be going to the hallowed grounds very soon. Besides that, if anything happens to Little Yao and Xiaoyao, then I'll be a worse defiant profounder than the defiant profounders. Trust me, I'm capable of anything and everything. Yang Yi had his eyes closed while powerful sword intent surged incessantly from within him, and even the space around him trembled. Mu Qingfeng gazed at Yang Yi for a short while, and then she sighed softly. I never expected it to be like this. I'm sorry. She left once she finished speaking. Meanwhile, the battle had come to an end as well. All the defiant profounders had perished. While they were very strong, and it was especially so for the black-robed old man. However, how could they be a match for Elder Mu and Lu Yen? Elder Mu and Lu Yen were on par with Supreme Exalt He. Yang Yi put their corpses away, and then he gazed at the members of the mermaid clan. Besides Qianlan, all the others from the mermaid clan hurriedly bowed slightly to Yang Yi and said, Sword Master, thank you for saving our lives. Yang Yi nodded, and then his gaze descended onto Qianlan. He naturally recognized her because she was the one who'd given him the water soul that day. However, she was very weak then. You're from the Nether Pavilion? What's your relationship to Nether Maiden? Asked Yang Yi. Mortal enemies, replied Qianlan. Why? Yang Yi frowned. She answered, I can't tell you that. Yang Yi nodded and said, What do you plan to do now? She replied, Kill the defiant profounders and take revenge. Yang Yi said, How about returning to ancient domain city with me? Qianlan shook her head and said, I want to guard this place. Otherwise, even more members of the oceanic clans will die if the defiant profounders come here. Yang Yi said, You're right. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Elder Mu and Lu Yen. Elder Mu, Senior Lu, can you destroy that teleportation formation that links the continent to the hallowed grounds? Lu Yen shook his head and said, It was created by a supreme expert of the outer heavens all those years ago, and it contains the energy of the laws. I can't destroy it with the strength I possess right now, unless I recover to my peak strength. Yang Yi pondered deeply for a short while and said, Move ancient domain city here. From now onwards, the territory of the oceanic clans will be the first line of defense of Profounder Continent, and it'll be the last line of defense as well. If we survive, then we'll survive together. If we die, then we'll die together. Thank you, Sword Master. All the members of the mermaid clan immediately kowtowed to Yang Yi, because it was impossible for the oceanic clans to move into the city. But once the defiant profounders arrived at the continent, then the first to suffer calamity was definitely the oceanic clans. Yet now, Yang Yi was moving ancient domain city here, and it proved that Yang Yi really intended to live and die with the oceanic clans. Lu Yen and Elder Mu nodded as well because they too agreed with Yang Ye's decision. Firstly, moving ancient domain city here could protect the oceanic clans. Secondly, it was equivalent to cutting all means of retreat. If they were able to guard this area, then everyone would be able to live. If they failed, then everyone would die together, because it was the first and the last line of defense. So, even those experts who were in hiding would definitely come to help. Because if they didn't and the line of defense was breached, then it represented that the entire continent was lost. At that time, no one would be able to survive. Qianlan glanced at Yang Yi yet didn't speak a word. Elder Mu and I will head to the hallowed grounds with you. Meanwhile, Lu Yen spoke abruptly. Yang Yi shook his head and said, This place can only be protected if Elder Mu and Senior Lu are here. If both of you leave, then we might lose the continent in an instant. I know what both of you are worried about. Don't worry. While my current desire to slaughter the hallowed grounds is greater than the defiant profounders, I won't act rashly, Lu Yen said. The situation isn't that bad. The main reason why they captured Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao is to regain the Stone of Suppression. They probably intend to use them to threaten you so that you would lead Profounder Continent to fight to the death for the hallowed grounds. It can be considered as a form of cooperation as well. However, they'll be in complete control. Elder Mu said, I don't support the idea of joining forces with the hallowed grounds. We'll definitely become nothing more than cannon fodder if we are to join forces with them. Regardless of whether it's the defiant profounders or the hallowed grounds, not a single one of them can be trusted. In short, we're in quite a bad situation right now. So, you must think before you do anything. Otherwise, many will die. Yang Yi nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll be careful. I'll leave Qingshi, Yushi, and the others to Elder Mu and Senior Lu." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Ye's figure vanished into the horizon. "Why did you choose to stay by his side?" Lu Yen spoke abruptly once Yang Yi left. "He might be our only chance to leave this world," replied Elder Mu. Lu Yen said, "I knew you would definitely be aware that he has that treasure with him." Elder Mu said, "What exactly is that treasure? Why did so many people fight for it?" Lu Yen shook his head and said, "Even I don't know what exactly it is. However, my young master, Yang Ye's father, should be aware. In short, regardless of what it is, it's just as you said, it might be our one and only chance to leave this world. Alas, actually I'm quite pleased with this young master of mine, Yang Yi. He possesses extraordinary natural talent. While it's nothing in the Yang clan, he really is not bad to have attained such accomplishment in this world. Unfortunately, if he doesn't change his character, then he'll probably suffer in the future. Not to mention those madmen from the Yang clan, even the outer heavens and the defiant profounders would be able to make him suffer a great deal. If the young aren't courageous and bold, then they wouldn't be the young anymore." Elder Mu said, "Maturity is a process that requires time. As for suffering, as far as I'm concerned, it's best for the young to suffer a little. It's beneficial, isn't it?" Lu Yen chuckled and said, "Let's not talk about that anymore. We have to be vigilant from now on and prevent the hallowed grounds from taking us by surprise. Otherwise, I don't know how insane he'll become." "You seem to not be worried about him at all." Elder Mu spoke abruptly. "While he's quite rash, he isn't a fool. It's the hallowed grounds that should be worried. If he truly goes crazy, then he would be much more terrifying than the defiant profounders," replied Lu Yen. "Is the Yang clan filled with madmen like him?" asked Elder Mu. Lu Yen had a solemn expression on his face as he answered Elder Mu, "They aren't just mad, they are simply insane." After he arrived at the hallowed grounds, Yang Yi didn't head straight for the hallowed halls. Because if he went there right away, then not only would he be unable to rescue Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao, he would even lose his life as well. He wasn't that stupid. Yang Yi summoned the sword spirit and said, "Have you finished refining those defiant profounders?" He'd handed the corpses of all those defiant profounders from before to the sword spirit. Now that he had the sword spirit by his side again, he naturally left the refinement of sword servants to her. She nodded and said, "Let me warn you first, if you charge into the ancient city of Hallows right now, then all I can say to you is farewell. I won't accompany you to give your life away. Is there any way to conceal my aura, so the experts of the hallowed grounds can't notice me?" asked Yang Yi. She replied, "Use the sword domain." Yang Yi spoke solemnly, "While I've advanced by 2 ranks and gained 100 years of life, can I even afford to use the sword domain?" He hadn't forgotten that merely utilizing it for a moment that day had caused a few hundred years of his lifespan to be exhausted. She said, "Fool, I didn't ask you to use it in battle. You just have to activate it and envelop yourself. If you don't use it in battle and don't rely on the energy of the laws, then you won't lose your lifespan at all." "I can do that?" Yang Yi frowned. "Why would I lie to you?" She was slightly angry. Yang Yi was about to speak when a few rays of light approached from the horizon, and it wasn't long before 3 people appeared before Yang Yi. Yang Yi clenched the ancient sheath tightly with his left hand because they were members of the hallowed grounds. Moreover, one of them was an old enemy of his, Xian Ming. "Yang Yi, to think you've fallen to such a state." Xian Ming had indescribable delight all over his face as he said, "Aren't you very strong? Aren't you very arrogant? Why don't you show me how strong you are? Why don't you show me how arrogant you are? Huh? Why aren't you speaking? Have you become mute? Come on, speak." "Ha ha ha." A sword howl resounded through the sky, and then a ray of light flashed before Yang Yi appeared behind Xian Ming. Xian Ming's voice stopped abruptly. His figure stiffened on the spot while disbelief filled his eyes, because there was a huge hole in his chest, and powerful sword intent was destroying everything within him. "I'm dead. I died just like that. How could he dare to do this?" Even now, Xianming was still unable to accept the reality that he was dead. As far as he was concerned, Yang Yi should bow to the hallowed grounds and do all he could to beg for mercy, because Yang Ye's younger sister and wife were in the hallowed hall's hands. That was exactly why he'd asked to wait here for Yang Yi. He wanted to watch Yang Yi being humiliated, watch how Yang Yi begged for mercy, and watch how living became worse than death for Yang Yi. His hatred for Yang Yi could be said to be the strongest throughout the hallowed grounds. Yang Yi hadn't just killed his senior brother. Yang Yi had even almost killed him on numerous occasions. Besides that, the experts of the hallowed grounds laughed at him because of Yang Yi. They said that both he and his senior brother were dignified half-saints, yet they were actually unable to deal with a single monarch realm profounder. Yang Yi hadn't just killed his senior brother. Yang Yi had caused him to be completely humiliated in the hallowed grounds. Such enmity and hatred made him constantly think about how to kill Yang Yi and how to make Yang Ye's life worse than death. He'd thought of countless methods to humiliate Yang Yi before he came here. He was very confident that Yang Yi wouldn't dare to attack them, because the hallowed grounds has Yang Ye's younger sister and wife. But the facts proved that he was wrong. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sword was pressed against Xianming's neck. Yang Yi had a ferocious expression in his eyes as he said, "Are you even worthy of threatening me with them? Trust me, you aren't the first to die, and you won't be the last. I swear that if the defiant profounders can't annihilate the hallowed grounds, then I'll do it." Swish! Xianming's head flew up into the air. "Yang Yi, how dare you?" The other two half-saints who came here with Xianming were horrified. They didn't attack, and they turned around and intended to flee instead. However, a group of sword servants surrounded them. Less than 2 breaths of time passed before both of them were killed. "Your rage and murderous intent are too strong," the sword spirit spoke abruptly. Yang Yi had constantly displayed a very calm appearance before this. Only when they arrived here and met Xianming's group did she finally realize that it wasn't calmness at all. He was suppressing his emotions. Now he couldn't suppress it any longer. "If anything happens to Xiaoyao and my younger sister, then I'll annihilate every single member of the hallowed halls that participated in this." Every person had a taboo. Yang Ye's taboo was his younger sister and his women. The sword spirit shook her head slightly. She knew that it was impossible for the hallowed grounds and profounder continent to be reconciled now. A short while passed before Yang Yi finally suppressed the killing intent in his heart. He said, "How many sword servants do I have right now?" "Almost 50. That black-robed old man is the strongest amongst them. To be frank, just this little bit of strength is utterly insufficient to fight the hallowed grounds." The sword spirit continued, "If you want to save them, then it's absolutely impossible to do it by force. I intend to sneak into the ancient city of Hallows." Yang Yi spoke in a low voice. "No!" The sword spirit immediately objected. "While you can conceal your aura, it doesn't matter if it's your sword, physical strength, or physical defenses. If any one of them is even slightly exposed, then you'll definitely die a graveless death." Yang Yi shook his head and said, "I know. It's very risky, but we don't have much time. The danger Xiaoyao and little Yao face grows with every second we delay. I must save them quickly. I've made my decision. You can leave if you think that it's dangerous. I won't stop you." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Ye's figure flashed and transformed into a ray of light that shot towards the horizon. The sword spirit remained silent on the spot for a short while, and then she transformed into a ray of light that shot after Yang Yi. She was very well aware that if she were to give up on Yang Yi, then it might be impossible for her to find another strong sword cultivator in this world. Moreover, she was very clearly aware of his temper. If she chose to leave now, then it would be equivalent to breaking off all connections with Yang Yi. Yang Yi was very clearly aware how dangerous it was. He could change his appearance and conceal his aura, but so long as his identity was exposed, then he would be in the hallowed grounds' control. After all, he would have no choice once the hallowed grounds used Little Yao and Ding Xiaoyao to threaten him. So, he absolutely couldn't expose his true identity before he rescued them. When he saw her chase after him, Yang Yi said, "You didn't have to come with me. Do you think I would if it wasn't for the fact that you can help me recover? The sword spirit glared at Yang Yi with slight displeasure, and then she transformed into a ray of light that entered his body. Yang Yi stopped over 500 kilometers away from the ancient city of Hallows because he would be an obvious target if he were to continue traveling on his sword. Yang Yi looked up at the blood-red sky and the smell of blood that covered the surroundings, and he frowned. He knew that besides the ancient city of Hallows, there were almost no other living beings left throughout the hallowed grounds. The defiant Profounders absolutely can't be allowed to enter Profounder continent. Yang Yi was very well aware that once the defiant Profounders entered Profounder continent, then the horrible state the hallowed grounds was in right now was the best example of what would become of Profounder continent. Yang Yi changed his appearance and clothes before he walked towards the ancient city of Hallows. It was long before he arrived near the city, and his expression instantly changed. There were heads outside the entrance to the city, a dense expanse of heads. There were heads of people of all ages and genders. Every single one of them was placed before the gates of the city, and there were a few hundreds of thousands of them. Yang Yi felt that he was ruthless in the past. Yet now, he noticed that he was absolutely inferior when compared to these defiant Profounders. There were many people standing on the walls of the city. There were members of the dragon race, demon race, and even more humans. At this moment, all their eyes were crimson red because they knew the owners of many of those heads below the city walls, or perhaps those heads even belonged to someone close to them. 3 black-robed young men were standing outside the city. One of them pointed at the heads and said towards the city, "See that? All of them died because of all of you. Because all of you didn't go and protect them. Of course, all of you were right to do so. After all, you can't even protect yourselves, so how can you protect them? Ha ha ha." He roared with laughter for a while before he continued. "See? There are only 3 of us here, but all of you still dare not leave the city. How sad is that? Don't you have a huge amount of geniuses? Come, get our here and let us witness your strength. Don't worry. We definitely won't act like cowards and gang up on you." Suddenly, the city gate opened, and then a woman walked out. It was Nether Maiden. The contempt on the black-robed man's face vanished when he saw Nether Maiden. Meanwhile, she didn't waste her breath at all, and her iron chain shot forward and transformed into shadows that covered the sky as it enveloped down upon him. The shock in Yang Ye's heart grew stronger and stronger as he watched their battle. The black-robed man's strength had slightly exceeded his expectations because he was actually able to fight Nether Maiden equally. However, it didn't take long for Yang Yi to withdraw his gaze. After all, he hadn't come here to watch the show. He waved his right hand and the sword spirit appeared by his side. "Take me in there." Yang Yi looked her in the eye and said, "I know you definitely have a way in." "I don't." She refused. "Consider it as me begging you this time," said Yang Yi. She gazed at him for a short while and said, "Do you know that nothing can happen to you at all? You've seen how terrifying the defiant Profounders and the hallowed grounds are. Both these forces desire the destruction of Profounder continent, and the continent would be finished if anything happens to you. Even if you refuse to consider your own safety, you should think about your wives on the continent." Yang Yi asked, "You want me to do nothing to save them from death?" She replied, "No. I'm asking you to give it further thought and think of a safe way." He shook his head and said, "There's no time. There really is no time. Every moment I waste is another moment for the danger they face to grow. I don't need you to go in there with me. You just have to send me in. I know you're definitely able to accomplish that." She remained silent for a long while before she sighed softly. After that, she formed a seal, and a ray of light flashed briefly. A circle of swords appeared beneath Yang Yi and her feet, and then they vanished on the spot. A long time passed before Yang Yi opened his eyes once more, and then he glanced at the surroundings. At this moment, he was within the city, and the sword spirit had gone to hide within him. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings once more, and then he walked towards the Hallowed Hall's Divine Palace. The Divine Palace was the main hall of the Hallowed Halls. It was where most of the experts of the Hallowed Halls resided, and it was where the elders of the Hallowed Halls carried out their meetings. If he wanted to know where Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao were, then he had no choice but to head there. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to arrive before a hall, and he completely concealed himself. Of course, such concealment wasn't even able to deceive an Exalt Realm Profounder. However, it was enhanced by his sword domain now, so not to mention an Exalt Realm Profounder, even Supreme Exalt, he couldn't detect his presence. Yang Yi walked straight into the hall. Countless powerful auras assaulted him as soon as he entered the hall, and he immediately felt like he was on the verge of being suffocated. At this moment, there were 15 people in the hall, and he recognized a few. There were the two supreme exalts of the hallowed halls, the blind old man from Nameless City, and even In. Supreme Exalt, you summoned us here in the name of the hallowed Lord. But why don't I see him here? Asked the blind old man. Supreme Exalt, he replied. The hallowed Lord is in closed-door cultivation. Now I'm managing everything within the city. I hope that all of you will cooperate with me. After all, every single one of the people here wasn't weaker than him, so he naturally didn't dare to order them around. Tell us what this is about, said the blind old man. Supreme Exalt, he nodded and said, all of you've witnessed the strengths of the defiant Profounders. They are experts from the ancient times, and our half-saints are like monarch realm experts before them. The gap between our strengths is truly too huge. We have no other choice but to rely on external forces to kill the defiant Profounders. The outer heavens? The blind old man said. They won't lend us a hand. They want us to take the defiant Profounders down with us, and then they'll clean up the survivors. Actually, they don't even have to come because this world will collapse soon, and the defiant Profounders will naturally vanish then. I know that they won't come, so we have to force them to, replied Supreme Exalt he. What do you mean? The person who asked this question was the Divine Talisman Master who rode the Black Qilin that day. A slightly savage smile appeared on the corners of Supreme Exalt he's mouth. A pillar of blood. It's common knowledge that the miserable death of a person would form a certain amount of resentment, blood energy, and baleful energy. Of course, that is nothing to us. But have all of you considered that while the baleful energy and resentment of a single person is very weak, what about the resentment and baleful energy of 100 million, a billion, or even tens of billions? The expressions of everyone here changed, and they gazed at Supreme Exalt he with shock. Supreme Exalt he continued. When the resentment, baleful energy, and blood energy of tens of billions of people gather in this world, and then someone guides that energy, then how terrifying would it be? Not to mention a single heaven path, it could even destroy 100 heaven paths. The reason the defiant Profounders are killing like madmen is actually for this exact same reason. They want to use the baleful energy, resentment, and blood energy to break through the heaven path. When he spoke up to this point, a wisp of insanity surged onto his face, and he continued. The hallowed grounds only has less than 10 billion inhabitants. Now, at least over 5 billion are dead. That's far from sufficient. So you drew the defiant Profounders towards Profounder Continent, right? Said the blind old man. Supreme Exalt, he said. Profounder Continent has a few tens of billions of inhabitants at the very least. If all of them die, then I think even the outer heavens wouldn't be able to stand by idly anymore. Yang Ye's heart shook when he heard this, and then killing intent flashed into his eyes. That killing intent had only just flashed into his eyes when Yang Yi cried out in his heart. Shit! As he expected. Someone is here. It was the Divine Talisman Master who spoke these words, and his gaze had descended on the exact same position where Yang Yi stood.